Hi, people. It's me, your teacher Marcelo. I hope you are not fed up with my image here, and my voice too. This class today is about types of diet. We have been discussing about food for a while. We're talking about meals, dinner, lunch, breakfast, things like that. Uh, so in this class today, we're gonna discuss the types of diet. So what are the diet people use to lose weight, or people who are diabetical, who cannot eat sugar? And at the end, we're gonna have some questions, and you can read them and answer them as an exercise. Okay? So I hope you like it. Right? Peace, love, harmony.
Hello, boys and girls. This is your teacher Marcelo speaking. And so we keep on talk about the subject of food, right? And now we're gonna talk about the types of diet. So what are the things people do um, to eat in a way they don't have health problems, right? So we start talking about this song named Diet Paranoia. It's a song from a band named Ratos de Porão. It's a Brazilian hardcore punk crossover band, right? Um, it was a very famous band during the 80s, 90s. It's very respected band outside Brazil, right? But we're gonna talk a little bit about the lyrics of Diet Paranoia. No, so as you can see, they talk, hey, you fat clown, don't you think it's time to lose some pounds, right? So talking about the moment people has to think about losing weight, right? And it's very interesting to talk about it because the singer of the band, he's a overweight individual, right? And just to clarify to you, pound is the weight measure used in English speaking countries. Instead of use kilos as we use here in Brazil, they use pounds, right? So they keep on saying, I'm a freak in the eyes of the society. I need your help, my baby. Uh, my hunger is back again. So in these lyrics, they're talking about the difficulty some people have to do some diets to stop eating some things. You know, uh, for example, in my case, I never had weight problems. Actually, I had the opposite because I was always too skinny. Not, I need to get uh, some pounds, some kilos, wherever. And actually, when I start to drink heavily, I start to get some beer belly. So now I'm not too thin because I'm doing some workout and things like that. You start to become older, and you become older, you become fatter. So this is not a very big issue to me right now. So in these lyrics, Diet Paranoia, they are talking about how the minds of the people start to get kind of confused uh, in this kind of fight between pleasure and between health. So sometimes you can put them together, but most of the times they are kind of separated in a way, right? So here's the band Ratos de Porão, right? From left to right, we had Boca is the drummer, right? Then we have João Gordo with a very beautiful Black Sabbath T-shirt, is the singer. Then we have João is the guitar player, right? And in the far right, we have Juninho is the bass player. Juninho is the newest member of the band, right? Uh, so Ratos de Porão is considered to be a hardcore punk band from São Paulo. Actually, I would say they are kind of hardcore punk crossover, because they were kind of they mix with a little bit of heavy metal and things like that. They were together with Sepultura in the 90s, the bands that were very known outside Brazil. Even inside Brazil, people respect a lot, Uh, and so they are a band that criticize a lot of things, Rato de Porão, they have a very interesting way of develop their music. For example, this song "Diet Paranoia" is from the record that I love the most of the band. It's "Another Crime in Massacreland." I think is the only record they record in English, right? And there is a song named "Video Macumba" that I just love it because it has like the heavy metal, the hardcore stuff. Uh, in the middle of the hardcore things, there's just this macumba beat, this candomblé beat, and I think it was wonderful the way they did, right? Um, and so nowadays we have, for example, the João Gordo is very interesting because uh, talking about diet paranoia, things like that. He had a lot of health issues. So after having these health issues, he started to okay, he had some problems with drugs and things like that, the typical rock and roller. But he also had problems with his weight, the eating habits and things like that. And so he started to become vegetarian, and then going a bit further, he became vegan, right? Nowadays, he has this YouTube program named Panelaço, where he welcomes people from many areas. Most of them are artists, and musicians, singers, and things like that. And he interviews these people, and during their interview, they taste vegan food. You know, it's very interesting because it shows like how vegan food can be tasteful. The only problem is because when you watch the video, you can watch and listen, but you cannot taste, not even smell it. So you have to trust in the João Gordos and the interviewed opinion about the food, right? But it's interesting. Yeah, I think it's a good way to tell people, to inform people about this way of behaving, right? Because we talk a little bit about veganism a little later, right? Now we'll talk about types of diet, right? We have here some types of diet that I'm going to show you. And the first one is the paleo diet. It is related to abandons all intake of sugar. And the only sugar is the one that comes from fruit, right? But it's also related to avoid, actually, to abandon processed foods and grains, right? Uh, the few number of carbohydrates in your system leads to a decreased amount of glucose. So that's a good connection that the paleo diet does. Because sometimes when you talk about sugar, people think about sugar itself. People think about sweet stuff, but actually, carbohydrates turn into sugar in our body, right? For example, if you eat the normal rice or the normal spaghetti, they have carbohydrates, so they will turn into sugar. For example, I'm now in a diet that I have to diminish my intake of sugar because I'm pre-diabetic. So I have to eat integral rice, integral bread, integral spaghetti, all of that. And I'm not complaining. To me, it's okay, But I didn't know that you can get sugar from carbohydrates, So this is the paleo diet. We also had the blood type diet. It's interesting diet because it coincides with particular blood types, right? Um, and you have to check your blood type to have some foods that are connected to it, right? For example, individuals with type O blood, right? It's my type actually. I recommend to eat lots of food that are high in protein, uh, like spinach, red meat, seafood, and broccoli. Uh, are suggest why dairy should be avoided. So dairy products are those type of food made up by milk, right? And actually, it's a diet that, for example, it's not very interesting to me because I'm trying to stop eating meat, mainly red meat. So since I saw when I was in East Timor, I saw an ox being killed the old-fashioned way, and it was traumatic. Since that time, I am avoiding eat red meat, and it's a problem living in Blumenau for a while because it's a place where people eat a lot of red meat, pork, ox, and things like that, right? But for example, seafood, I love it. I'm loving seafood right now. Vegetables, I'm trying to eat more. So I'm trying to be healthy as as I can. Then we have the South Beach diet, right? In this case, is a brand is a kind of new diet because it was introduced in 2003. So it's the premise of changing one's overall eating habits uh, by balance out one's everyday diet. So, but in this case, certain carbohydrates are completely avoided, right? It doesn't mean you have to eliminate altogether, but some of them you have to uh, avoid, right? And South Beach is a place in California, actually. So, as you can see, Californian people, they are kind of more they look for health in a way because we have a lot of surfers and things like that. So it's an interesting one to check it. Then we have the Mediterranean diet, right? So uh, it's a diet that it's vegetable have diet, right? And avoids a lot of meat. So it's a kind of way to become a vegetarian or vegan. It's a way because it does not eliminate it altogether. It's still you eat some meat, but in a less proportion, right? Uh, and it's interesting because this diet has been proven to help with depression. So it's interesting connection because some people they never think that eating or some things can trigger some depression events in your life. So but actually if you think a bit clearly, if you see some people who are depressed, mostly girls when they were depressed, they used to eat chocolate, because the sugar makes you feel excited in a way, right? uh, the other diet is the raw food diet. So it's a diet that is related to not to eat just raw food, right? To not cook it, in a way you can eat like it was before human beings know how to cook, right? It's also uh, eliminates foods that are pasteurized, foods that had any kind of synthetics or additives. So to try to be the most natural as possible. Okay, talking about food, about diet, we have to talk about vegetarian, vegan, right? So it's the vegetarianism is the practice of abstaining from the consumption of meat, and then you have all the types of meat that are concerned to it. And may also include abstention from byproducts of animal slaughter, like leather, on other parts of the animal. So, but veganism is a more radical way of this approach, right? So, for example, some vegetarian they eat cheese, for instance, but vegan they just eat cheese made by soil, like tofu cheese and things like that, right? So they avoid anything that came from animals, right? So it's more radical. And but that's the thing about veganism. Sometimes you don't find places to buy vegan food. For example, in Blumenau, I'm trying to look for some places. I find two places where vegan food is available, and sometimes they are not very tasteful, So that's also the other problem because eating is also a celebration, right? Then we have here the fasting, So fasting is the willing abstinence of reduction of some or all food, drink or both for a period of time. So when you fast, when you do a fasting, you don't eat. You just eat some things. Don't eat everything you want, And some people do it partially. Some people do it completely. I use when I was in East Timor, I used it was the first time that I did fasting to try to feel healthier, right? But the first time I did fasting was in Slovenia when I had problems with my relationships and things, and I stayed about 5 days without eating anything. But I was drinking water, drinking juice, but not eating anything solid. So about fasting is interesting you to know that humans need food and water to survive. It's a kind of obvious, right? But there's a difference between one and the other because at least 60% of the adult body is made of water, right? So a human can go without food for about 3 weeks, but would typically only last 3 to 4 days without water. And as I was preparing this class, I was reading about people doing fast for 30 days, 40 something days, but you cannot do the same without water, because water is important to our body, to our development, so you stay without water, you simply die. That's no choice about it. So here at the end, we have this exercise for you to do, right? You can do it. You can write it down. You can record. Is more exercise for yourselves to know a little bit about your connection with the food. So the first one, how many meals do you have a day? So in our culture, most of the time people have three meals a day, right? Me, for instance, I just have I have one and one, sometimes two. I not very much about eating a lot, you know. If you some of you saw me eating at the restaurant there, and my dish for the the midday for the lunch is really big, but it's big because most of the time it's the only time I eat during the day, right? What do you normally eat at breakfast? So, do you eat the typical Brazilian breakfast, bread, cheese, ham, coffee, juice, or you just or do eat something different? For example, in Salvador, some people used to eat beans in the breakfast, and even sometimes they eat feijoada in the breakfast. No, so it's very heavy one, I think. What do you eat at lunch, at home, out home? So because sometimes when you are at home, you have a choice to choose a choice to do for your meal, right? But when you are out home, you have to eat what is offered to you. What do you eat at dinner? You know, some people most of the time they eat less at dinner than during the day. Have you ever done any diet? What for? You know, so have you ever tried to do a diet? What was the reason you tried to do this diet? It's for some health issue. It's just because you want to try. No. Have you ever thought about being vegetarian, vegan? So you're gonna tell if you had an experience to become vegan, vegetarian. What do you think about it? Have you ever imagined to try do this? Have you ever done fasting? How long? How did you feel? So, have you ever had an experience to stay a lot of time, a lot of days without eating? Uh, because sometimes the fasting you do is not because you want, but the situation put in this in this way of doing. For example, if you remember, uh, even I'll give a current example. Right now, we are have this quarantine where people can not go out for some things, uh, and sometimes people don't calculate very well, and they bought less food that they need. No, so you have the choice. Okay, I go out to buy more food, or try to hold myself a little bit more. So this is a very current situation people are living. What is the food you hate the most? So, is there any food that you feel like, oh Jesus, I don't eat this for nothing, man, like not for $1 billion, right? Uh, because some type of food really, it's not a matter of a kind of food that you cannot eat. It's a kind of food that you don't like to eat, right? And what's the food you love the most? So what is that food that you just feel like, oh man, I could eat this food for the rest of my life without the need of eating anything else? For example, in my case, I love pizza, right? But I know I cannot eat pizza all the time because I don't have all the nutrients necessary for a good living, right? Do you know how to describe a recipe? So, is there anything you know how to do or to describe? For instance, I don't cook very well. I just cook the necessary for survive, right? But the only kind of elaborated dish I know how to do is stroganoff, right? But that's a thing right now. As I'm stopping to eat meat, I have to change the meat for other thing or other protein or something like that to do the stroganoff. I'm trying to do with banana or something like that, but it's different, Have you ever had food problems like poisoning, choking, allergies, etc.? So, for example, it's very common to me when I go to eat with my friends to eat and to talk a little bit, some uh, uh, not very important talk, having some fun, tell some jokes. But it's a problem sometimes because I remember I was with some friends. We are having lunch, and I was telling some jokes and things like that. And one of my friends, he got choked. So it was really really difficult situation. Uh, we could pass over it, but it was a bit scary, because he was a very white guy and he started to get blue from the the neck up, so it was really weird, and he was saved because a friend of mine who is a doctor, he made the Heimlich maneuver, it's a way to put out the food that is choking in his throat, so he was saved by that. But not always you have somebody who knows how to do the situation, right? And also about poisoning allergies, so it's something, sometimes you eat something, you don't know the results, and suddenly you have some allergy and stuff like that, no? So this is our class for today. I hope you enjoy it. If you have some questions, some doubt, or anything like that, or some suggestion, just send me by email or send in by Siga. And I hope to see you soon. Take care.